Hi, welcome to another episode of Queer View Mirror, a show about queer people, by queer people, for queer people, and our allies. I'm Scott.
And I am Dawn. We are coming to you from our studio here in Port Alberni, the unceded territories of the Tashot and Hoopa-Chesed peoples, where we live, love, and play all day. This is Queer View Mirror coming at you. Hey Scott, who do we have today?
Well, joining us today from Power Up Education is Kerri Isham. Kerri saw a need several years ago for extra education, especially sex education with young people. So she formed a company and put together a program.
I just love that interview we had with her. I learned so much. Well, without talking anymore, let's go to the interview.
Welcome, Kerri. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Wonderful. So why don't we just dive right in and why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and what you do?
Okay, sure. Well, I've been an educator for 25 years, and I started off my teaching career in District 69, Parksville, Qualicum. And I spent 13 years there teaching grades 6, 7, and 8. And in 2009, I decided that I wanted to leave a full-time continuing job with 106 days and my pension and kind of venture out into the entrepreneur world. And it's worked out really well for me.
That's wonderful. And your your company is Powered Up Education.
Power Up Education, yeah.
Power Up Education. And you've written how many books?
I've done 3 workbooks. So the first one is Body Smart Right from the Start. It's a sexual abuse prevention workbook for kids ages 3 to 8. Then Puberty Coming to a Body Near You is for grade 3 to 7. And then Beyond Puberty is my latest book, and that is for grade 6 to adults. The book is focused on supporting youth and adults with intellectual disabilities. And then my 4th book I co-authored with Lindsay Ford of Bread and Clutter. And the book is called The Things We Can't Unsee, How to Talk to Kids About Pornography.
Interesting. And what is the age group target of that book?
Usually about 8 and up. It really depends. I have read that book to some of my clients who were exposed to pornography at a younger age. So just as a sort of a gateway for us to be able to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, Scott, starting off, like the very reason we invited you is because, like as we said, the turf issue has become quite loud, for lack of a better term. And according to Scott, you do some work related to this in sort of like educating and consulting with parents of queer children who are in that area or in that situation of being trans. Right?
Yes.
But before we go to that, so what is Power Up Education all about? You said it was a sexual health consultation.
Yeah, so I specialize in 3 areas: sexual abuse prevention, supporting youth, children, and adults with ASD and FASD. And then I also have a particular interest in sharing information about how pornography viewing impacts children and youth.
Okay. Yeah, but going back to Scott's question, the very reason why we brought you on the interview was, could you say that again, Scott?
Doing some research, and we did a show previously featuring 2 trans women and talking about the turf issue. And I know you support families with queer kids and trans kids, and just wondered what your work with them was like.
Sure. Well, years ago, AJ McLeod and I actually started Generation Q, which runs out of the Boys and Girls Club. We took over from 2 gals that had been running it out of Princess Anne School. And we formed a partnership with the BGC, the Boys and Girls Club, which is now BGC, to be more inclusive of everybody. And I think that's been running for 7 or 8 years now. I'm not directly involved anymore, but got it started and volunteered for probably about 4 or 5 years. AJ's still involved, and another gal named Vanessa. And basically Thursday nights, the youth meet from 6:30 to 8:30, all sorts of different, games nights, arts and crafts nights, video nights. In the fall, I did a sexual health workshop for them, which went really well. And some of the concerning things that came out from there is that they weren't getting a lot of sexual health education. So I am, I guess, phasing out of that work a little bit now, because now there are actually people who are clinical counselors. We also have Trans Care BC. So 10 years ago, I would say I started working with my first youth who was transgender. He actually found out about what transgender meant on the Tyra Banks show, if you can believe it or not, but he always identified as male. And he watched the show and it kind of sort of blew his mind open that now he had a word to describe who he was. I know the person was 15 at the time and had basically spent their entire life identifying as a boy, but now had actually a word to describe or to help him understand how he was showing up in the world.
Okay, now I'm curious about, from your professional point of view, what would you say to people who, like you already mentioned, only view gender as boy and girl or male or female? What do we have to present, like solidly, scientifically or medically, that their notion is wrong?
Well, I like to try to support people and not say that they're right or wrong, but I encourage them to look at gender and sexual orientation as a spectrum. And I often use an abacus, which is a simple tool for people to understand that one binary might be like the person identifies as, you know, male or female, but then you have a spectrum of people that would be identifying differently. Mm-hmm. I think for me, all we have to really do is look around the world. And I think it's super damaging for people to say there's only two genders, because we know that if we ask people what gender identity they most identify with, is lots of kids are saying non-binary. Some kids will say that, I'm gender fluid or transgender. And I guess, for me, it's not a question of like, do they exist? It's like, well, just look around, because they're everywhere and they've been there forever. It's just people are now feeling safer to come forward and express their gender identity, to express, how they want to be with clothing, with makeup, with hairstyles, with whatever. And I think, I'm hoping by the time I leave the planet that people won't have to share their gender or sexual orientation, that people are just going to be able to accept people for who they are.
Are there available resources we can point them to?
Yeah, I mean, Trans Care BC is really great. There's a website, and I can send you a resource list too if you want to post that. But like Community is great. There's both. Yeah, Scarletine is a really good website around sexual health because it's gender neutral and very accessible language to kids. In Nanaimo, we have a clinic, Options for Sexual Health, that just moved to Dufferin Crescent. From across from the RCMP. So I'd like youth to know about that. But there's tons of great resources out there. And of course, it's better to start off with a website than a Google search, because we know where that goes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, and a lot of your work focuses on exactly that, right? Sexual health, sexual safety. Can you share with us some of the resources that you use to support the kids?
Sure. Well, I've created all my own lesson plans, so I don't even know, I would have in excess of probably 30 different lesson plans from kindergarten to grade 12. I definitely use Options for Sexual Health website. I use Scarletine website. I attend a ton of professional development, because it's really important for me, especially with the gender and sexual orientation. The terms are changing all the time. And just when I think I know what I'm talking about, that I meet someone that doesn't really fit into my expectations of how people have presented to me in the past. And I just really remain curious about that. I also use the Adolescent Health Survey, which comes out every 5 years. The next time will be 2023. So in the 2018 Health Survey, they have all sorts of questions that they ask youth. Usually about 30 to 40,000 youth in BC fill out the survey. And that survey really informs what I choose to teach kids. So if there's, hey, only 60 some odd kids the last time they had sex or using condoms, that would be a focus me for the next year. Or, 60 some odd kids are the last time they had sex, they were using alcohol. So I plan what I'm going to teach based on the responses from students in British Columbia.
That's fantastic.
In your organization, Power Up Education, what is the range of clientele that you cater to?
Yeah, two. I've had clients that were seniors. One of the most profound workshop I ever did as an educator was to work with men who had prostate cancer and were dealing with incontinence and erectile challenges, and how their relationship with their partners were at the workshop too. This is years ago. How they were then focusing on outer course instead of intercourse, and how they were able to be intimate with one another. It was an incredibly beautiful experience for me. And so the work that I do is super varied. I support people through the Autism Society. I have clients from the Ministry of Child and Family Development, usually kids with FASD or ASD. I have had clients who were sexually abused as children, wanted just to share what happened to them without having to report it to police or anything, but they didn't want to carry this burden. I do a lot of work with families where the children are experiencing child-on-child sexual harm. And so a blended family, or, families where there's, stuff going on, I may come in, educate the whole family. Right now I'm doing a teen series, a 6-part teen series for youth 12 to 18 to be viewed with an adult. I also do online programs for preschool age kids with their parents. I just did a training on Monday for National Alcohol Awareness Week. And so I did one on healing and resiliency. And then in the morning, I did one on sexual health education for youth with support needs. And I support little people who've had, sexual interference, and we're building skills and resiliency from there. I used to do a ton of teaching in the schools, but we have created a K-7 and grade 8 to grade 12 sexual health packages. So schools have access to pre-recorded videos, downloads, handouts, recommended videos and things like that, so that they can actually do the teaching themselves with support from me without me having to be there.
So it's safe to say that your organization, Power Up Education, is a resource as well.
Absolutely.
And how long has this been going on now?
Since 2009.
So just in terms of process, and I realize everybody's journey is entirely different, but let's say an 11 or 12-year-old child says to their parents, hey, I'm the opposite gender. And the parent wants to be supportive. What would that journey look like for the parent with their child wanting to transition?
Mm-hmm. Well, usually what I find is the elementary school kids usually tell their parents first. The high school kids usually tell their peers first. And some of my students actually transitioned at school, changed to who their parents thought they were gender-wise when they get home. Like it is a heavy responsibility for them to kind of mask themselves. But the first step is basically a social transition. Does the child want a different haircut? Do they want to get their ears pierced? Do they want to wear certain clothes? How do they want to present? And this can be a really gradual change, or some of my clients, it's like an overnight. And I don't mean an overnight that they just thought about it one night, but they've been thinking about it. And then they're like, today is the day I'm doing this. And sometimes the parents are really surprised because they say they didn't see it coming. And other parents are like, oh, this totally makes sense now because I get where my child's at. So there's a lot of rumors and misinformation about, changing genitalia and, going on hormones and things like that. And so I go through the process with parents, which is, your first sort of person you would contact is your family doctor if you have one. And then from your family doctor, you may be referred to, a psychologist or a counselor, someone that can affirm that you indeed have gender dysphoria. Then from there, you would be seeing an endocrinologist. And if you are past Tanner 1, which is a scale that is for puberty, you would be given puberty blockers like Lupron. And basically it buys the child time. So they don't go through puberty. So let's just say someone's 11 and they're like, I cannot go through puberty as a girl. I don't want to get my my period. I don't want to have breast development because I don't want to have breasts because I'm a boy. So they would give them something like Lupron, and Lupron is completely reversible. And this is one of the things that people who are sort of, transphobic or anti-trans will say, you're mutilating the body. If somebody goes on puberty blockers and they're taken off, they will go through puberty as the sex that they were assigned at birth, right? Then a child who's like, you know what, actually, I don't think I'm a boy. I'm going to stay as a girl. No harm, right? Then at about 15 or 16, depends, like when people come forward, they're given cross hormones. So testosterone if it's a trans male and estrogen if it's a trans female. And then the person will only go through puberty once. So I'll explain that. So some of my clients went through puberty as a boy or a girl. And then when they went on cross hormones, they essentially go through puberty a second time, including oily hair, acne and things like that. So you can probably understand that if somebody identified as male and they don't want breasts, but if they've already gone through puberty, then they're binding and things like that, they will need top surgery. If we give Lupron or other puberty blockers, then they don't have the body changes because they don't go through puberty as their sex assigned at birth. And for most of my kids, the mental health issues that come with trying to transition after your body's already changed in a direction that you didn't want it to change, that's when people really, in my experience, struggle.
Wow.
And that's because they don't identify with the body they're in.
Yeah, I mean, if you are a trans girl, then you don't want facial hair. Or maybe you do. I shouldn't say that. Some people do, some people don't. But that could cause high levels of gender dysphoria, right? Because it's harder to pass as the gender that you want to be if you're a trans female and you have facial hair. And I have lots of friends who are trans female who are now paying a huge amounts of money for electrolysis because it's still not covered under our medical, which in my personal opinion, it should be.
I see.
How much of transitioning is covered by medical? That's a really good point. It can be a really expensive process.
It really depends on the parents' medical plans for certain things, but I do know, so if somebody right now in Canada, the only place to get bottom surgery is in Montreal. So the bottom surgery is covered. Your flights are not covered. The aftercare is not covered. Your accommodations, if you stay there, are not covered. So I know people that have done GoFundMe things and stuff like that and have to save, right? And so when we're looking at people's mental health, I don't want people to have to wait too long to be able to have access to these surgeries because some people, complete suicide because they're so unhappy with their body and how they feel in the world.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I would not wish gender dysphoria on anybody. But another issue of the TERFs, for lack of a better term, is the law. And because this TERF fellow who turned TERF said, I'm homeschooling my children from now on because what they teach in the school is harmful to children, supposedly. What exactly is the issue there?
Someone, and I'm going to pull it up, someone shared an incredible quote the other day, which I will share with you about that specific topic. Here we go. So a couple of years ago, we have created SOGI curriculum, sexual orientation, gender identity. So this caused a big kerfuffle, And people think that learning about sexual orientation and gender has something to do with sexual health, and it really doesn't. In this quote, it says, teaching K-5 students about LGBTQ identities is not about teaching sex ed. These lessons help kids find the words to accurately describe the people they see every day. No one is too young to learn about love and respect for the diverse individuals and families in their own school community.
That is a very well put statement. So you were talking about support a while ago, like the highest suicide rate among trans people or trans teenagers or whoever they may be is highest when they do not have that family support. What would you say to a person who does not have that support? She's trans, or he or she is trans, and they do not have the family support. How would you handle that from your line of work?
Yeah, I mean, I always say to parents, it's basically like a why, right? You support your child, they thrive. You don't support your child, and suicidal ideation will be part of the path, right? So I would say to that youth or that child is to find people at their school, people at their church, people in their after school program or their activities. And you know, I don't know why, but it seems like the LGBTQ community has like this kind of radar, beam, you know, like they put it out there and then they just attract people like them. And so at any given high school, you know, there's pods of kids, just like when I was growing up, and they find each other. And they find each other sometimes at the Rainbow Club or whatever, or they just like intuitively know that these are my people. This is my tribe. And then, because I really think that as long as, and this goes for all kids, as long as a child or a teenager has one friend at school, it really makes a huge difference. And then if they can link up with an adult that thinks like they're the best thing since sliced bread, then they're going to thrive. We know that. It takes one committed adult for a child to feel loved and valued. And that could be their teacher, could be their guitar teacher, could be an aunt or uncle or an older cousin or older brother and sister, one person.
All right. What would you say to a TERF to hopefully dissuade him or her?
I would just say to take an opportunity to actually look around. Look around how people are presenting in the world. If they're presenting different from you, does that really impact your life? Well, and it's no different with sexual orientation too, right? What someone is doing in the privacy of their own home or bedroom is none of my business. Mm-hmm. And I have a friend, his saying is like, don't yuck someone else's yum. So
I love that.
It's like, or they have certain interests or whatever. It's like, that does not impact me in any way. But now you hear that all the time. Now people have adopted that because it really makes sense. I mean, I guess my fear is like, my thinking is, why is someone putting so much negative energy into something when there's so many things that we need to actually focus on that are important? Mm-hmm. Yeah, loving, exactly. Supporting, being kind, being, careful with Mother Earth. So why would you spend so much time hating someone because of their gender? Like, it's just, that could make me cry actually, because I just don't get it. I don't get it.
Absolutely. And, let's face it, we're busy people. And, we like to support people and help our friends and whatnot. Do we have time for this crap? Mm-hmm. And, really, if your life is that empty that, yes, you do, then you have bigger problems.
Oh, just one more point before we wrap up. Because when it comes to the area of choice, like I have my brother and some other uncles or whatever, some narrow-minded people who say, oh, when did you choose to become gay? No, I didn't choose to become gay. I was born this way, and I'm just realizing it. I'm just making you aware that I'm this way, right? Mm-hmm. And my homophobe brother, his son came out. So how profound. Anyway. So.
You know what? That's the karma lesson, right? It's like, yeah. And I wanted to actually share, if I can, the resource on Facebook. So one of them for parents is called Parents with Transgender Children up to Tanner Stage 2. And then Schooling Transgender Children is the second one. And the third one is Canadians parenting transgender children. And all of those, the first and third are moderated by John Cross.
I think the choice occurs on what gender they want to or when they want to transition.
Well, the choice occurs because do you want to be treated for your gender dysphoria or not?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to look at it that way. It's not like a lifestyle choice. It's correcting absolutely. A medical issue.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the families that I support, they have children that transitioned at 2 or 3.
Wow.
And
really? Is that allowed though?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's choice of clothing, choice of haircut, really. There's no drugs or anything involved at that age.
Okay.
We have kids in our school, and I've known several of them who are transgender and nobody knows, because you don't have to say, by the way, I just want to let you know my child's transgender, or tell the principal, because you don't have to disclose that. Some kids want people to know they're transgender, and some people want to remain stealth, which is, I don't want anyone to know my gender identity other than what I say, right? Because no kid should ever need to see someone's genitals at school. So then whether you have a penis or a vulva is actually irrelevant to your gender identity.
Because I was just going by what Erin, our first transgender guest was in episode 2, and what she said sort of like clarified everything to me. So you have your sex, your biological, physiological sex. Then you have your gender, which is a spectrum, which is the same thing you said. And then on top of that, you have your orientation, your sexual orientation.
Exactly.
What you're attracted to. Like Erin is a male who became a female, but she is with a female.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't necessarily follow that if you're... I have another case who transgendered, and so when she transgendered, she was going after men until... a lady came up to her and said, "Oh no, you shouldn't go after the men. You're a dyke. You should go after the women." And so she did, and she found her partner, and they live happily ever after here in Port Alberni.
Yeah, well, and the other thing is sexual orientation is very fluid, right? In certain times, you may be attracted to men, women, both, neither, everyone, and that can change from person to person.
Before we sign off for the night, though, did you have any parting words or anything you want to mention or talk about upcoming?
I think I really encourage people to be kind and to be supportive and really to mind their own business.
You heard it here on QVM, mind your own business.
Mind your own bedroom.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, thanks so much, Kerri. Really appreciated having you on today.
Wasn't that great?
Yeah, this was super.
I just love how Kerri filled a need, and she's helped facilitating a lot of uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah, the problem today is so many people are just informed but barely educated. Even the school system and the curriculum is so outdated. But thank you to Kerri and her efforts. I heard she sold some of her programs to the Nanaimo school or something like that. We can look forward to a better, more, not just informed, but a more educated society in the days to come.
If you'd like to reach out to Kerri, her contact details will be at the end of the show.
This has been Queer View Mirror. We'll catch you next time.